Drawn and Redrawn, The Making of India's Internal Boundaries.
Hi, and welcome back to India's State Stories, a project that explores the evolution of India's political and administrative boundaries. This project is supported by the Center for Legislative Education and Research, Flame University, Pune.
Now we turn towards the last set of princely states that became the Part C states. These were the unique territories that were governed directly by the central government through a chief commissioner. This status was reserved for such states that were either deemed underdeveloped or held strategic importance. They were also generally intended as temporary arrangements later to be merged into either Part A or B states. The following episodes take a careful look at each Part C state and the story behind its formation. Listen to the first 3 episodes of Season 2 to understand a deeper context. These episodes give an overview of the entire process of integration, along with an introduction to the legal instruments and some key personalities which made it possible. More details are in the show notes below, and let's dive in.
Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine India, right on the cusp of independence. It wasn't yet the unified nation we know today, but more like a complex mosaic. Nearly 600 princely states, each one with its own ruler, its own distinct history, and often its own, bold vision for what the future might hold. Today, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most compelling and intricate stories from that pivotal era, the integration of Bhopal state. We've dug into, extensive historical records, government notes, personal accounts, tracing Bhopal's journey, right from its founding roots to its eventual merger into the Indian Union. Our mission here is clear: to pull out the crucial insights, the surprising turns, and the strategic decisions that really shaped its destiny, and, by extension, the very map of modern India. You're about to get a clear pathway, hopefully, to understanding that intricate dance of power, personality, and negotiation that defined this huge moment.
It's a truly fascinating chapter, because Bhopal wasn't just any princely state. It really stood out. A principal Muslim state in central India, ranking second only to Hyderabad in significance. And it was led by this remarkably influential Nawab. Its story offers a vivid microcosm, really, of the immense challenges that came up during India's partition and, the monumental task of integrating hundreds of these independent states. It makes you think, how do you convince diverse, often fiercely independent entities to join a unified nation, especially when their leaders have strong, sometimes totally opposing visions for their future?
Exactly. So let's paint that initial picture. Bhopal, this strategically important Muslim state right in the heart of India. It traces its lineage back to Dost Muhammad, an Afghan adventurer who basically carved out independent authority around 1708, 1709. It even had a long-standing formal treaty of alliance with the British, signed way back in 1818, which essentially guaranteed its integrity. But maybe its most interesting period of leadership, certainly unique, was between 1844 and 1926. It was ruled by 3 powerful Begums, female rulers. Quite progressive for the time. Then in 1926, Sir Hamidullah Khan takes the throne, becoming the last Nawab. And with him, the story of Bhopal's integration really takes on this remarkable and pivotal dimension.
Yes, Sir Hamidullah Khan was far from your ordinary ruler. His influence, it stretched well beyond Bhopal's borders. He served as Chancellor of the Chamber of Princes, not once, but twice, 1931-32, and then again from 1944 to 47. And for anyone maybe not familiar, the Chamber of Princes was this body the British set up, to advise on matters relating to the princely states. So being Chancellor gave him significant clout across India. It's quite striking, actually, that his prestige and position were often seen as, disproportionate to the actual size and revenue of his state. This wasn't just some local leader. This was a national figure in princely India, and he had a very specific, very strong vision for the future of these states.
A really significant figure, then. You mentioned his prestige was kind of disproportionate to his state size.
Yeah.
What exactly, beyond being chancellor, gave him that outsized influence? What made him so respected, or maybe formidable among his peers, even before independence was right there?
That's a really good question. Beyond those formal roles, the Nawab was known for his sharp intellect, definitely his strong negotiating skills, and his ability to articulate a clear, coherent vision for the princely order. He was seen as a leader who could speak for the collective interests of the states, often pushing for greater autonomy. So this allowed him to punch above his weight, so to speak, in the political landscape of British India. His reputation for being shrewd and for, unwavering resolve really cemented his national standing.
And he certainly had a bold vision for that future you mentioned. Before India's independence, the Nawab came up with this truly unique, ambitious idea for the princely states. He told the cabinet mission back in April 1947 that the Indian states wanted to maintain their existence with the maximum degree of sovereignty possible, absolutely no interference from British India. He actually proposed a third India, a parallel entity made up of the states, designed to stand alongside British India and Pakistan.
Right. And placing this in the broader context, this wasn't just about keeping autonomy for individual states. It was a fundamental challenge to the very idea of a unified India inheriting the British mantle. He explicitly pleaded that the British Crown's supreme authority over the states, controlling their external affairs, defense, while allowing internal autonomy should not be transferred to an Indian government. Imagine a tripartite subcontinent. With a third India potentially fragmenting the new nation geographically, politically, it would have created huge, maybe unmanageable complexities right at India's birth. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What would the map of India look like today if that third India had actually happened?
His opposition to joining India was so strong, he famously said rulers were being invited like the oysters to attend the tea party with the walrus and the carpenter. That was about the crucial meeting of rulers on July 25, 1947, which, unsurprisingly, he didn't attend. He genuinely believed it would be impossible for Bhopal to become an organic part of either dominion, meaning India or Pakistan. Instead, he suggested entering into separate treaty relations with both. That's a powerful stance, seeing his state as truly independent.
Precisely. It speaks volumes about a ruler who genuinely saw his state as a sovereign power, exploring options beyond just joining one of the two new dominions. He was trying to forge a unique path in a world that was changing incredibly fast. Yet the Nawab's personal resolve and that grand vision, that was only one layer of Bhopal's complexity. If you dig deeper, you find the state itself presented several unique, really thorny issues that made its integration particularly delicate.
Okay, so what were those unique characteristics? What made Bhopal such a distinct challenge, even among the hundreds of other states lining up?
Well, firstly, a significant chunk of Bhopal's Muslim population lived right there in Bhopal town, the capital. That naturally meant any integration process needed specific reassurances, to manage potential anxieties. Secondly, the Bhopal state forces, predominantly Muslim, and many of them had family ties to the newly formed Pakistan. Handling their disbandment and reorganization needed extreme delicacy, balancing loyalty with the new national reality. Thirdly, the state's administrative services, especially the police, were overwhelmingly Muslim. That called for significant readjustment, integration into a new national framework. And finally, despite being a major state, Bhopal was surrounded by states of Maratha origin, and it sat right at the geographical center of India's main communication system. Immense strategic importance for the new Indian Union. So it wasn't just about political will. There were these deep-seated social, demographic, and frankly, logistical challenges.
Just think about that for a second. A state with a Muslim majority in its capital city, a military largely drawn from what was now a separate nation, and a critical geographical spot right in the heart of the subcontinent. Integrating this wasn't just a political decision on paper. It was a logistical and social tightrope walk of the highest order. You can just imagine the immense sensitivity involved. Disbanding a loyal Muslim majority state force, restructuring a police service mostly staffed by Muslims. Every single move had to be meticulously planned to avoid, fanning the flames of communal tension in that already volatile post-partition environment. The pressure must have been incredible.
Indeed. The human element, those specific demographics, the loyalties of its people, that really amplified the complexity for Bhopal, perhaps more than for many other states.
Okay, so given these huge challenges and the Nawab's pretty firm stance, you have to wonder, how did such a deeply held position eventually change? The path to joining India wasn't exactly smooth. The integration of Bhopal, it was a long process. It demanded frequent trips by key figures like VP Menon, who was one of the main architects of integrating the princely states. And the Nawab himself, he was noted for his, and I quote, extraordinary passion for detail. Apparently, he required every tentative conclusion to be written down and initialed. This wasn't just being fussy. It was a sign of his absolute control and meticulous approach. He left nothing to chance in his negotiations.
And a crucial point here, often mentioned, is Lord Mountbatten's long-standing personal friendship with Nawab Hamidullah Khan. It seems that played a significant role, though maybe not the only role, in his eventual decision to accede. Despite his strong initial resistance, once he saw most other rulers had chosen accession, the Nawab initially asked if he could just sign a standstill agreement, the temporary pact to keep existing administrative links going with India, without fully committing politically. But he was firmly told no, that wasn't possible as a standalone move. It really shows the limits of individual negotiation, even for someone as powerful as him, once the broader political tide had turned so decisively.
So he basically had to make a choice. Initially, right after Bhopal acceded to the Indian Union, the Nawab and his state were sort of left alone for a bit. Granted, a period of relative calm, but that quiet didn't last. Soon, the state faced widespread agitation, demands for responsible government, and a merger with the larger entity of Madhya Bharat. And this wasn't just abstract political talk. It involved public demonstrations, calls for democratic reforms, a growing demand from the people themselves to be part of the larger Indian Union, to move beyond autocratic rule.
Yeah.
The people clearly wanted a say in their own future.
Exactly. The political ground was shifting fast, right there within Bhopal itself. The Nawab's initial vision for a separate path, it was increasingly clashing with the popular feeling for integration and democratic government. His maneuvering room was definitely shrinking, caught between the central government's clear policy and his own people's aspirations.
So by January 1949, with pressure mounting from both inside and outside the state, the Nawab writes to Sardar Patel, India's Iron Man of integration, asking for advice. This led to another crucial visit from VP Menon, who came with a very clear, very unequivocal message.
Menon told him straight, Bhopal could not continue as a separate state. It should merge with Madhya Bharat. He pointed to its geographical, ethnic, cultural affinity with the Malwa region. He advised that the existing ministry should resign and the Nawab should temporarily take over the administration directly. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? After all the Nawab's maneuvering, how much individual autonomy was truly possible at this late stage? Given the powerful currents of Indian nationalism and that integration policy, the answer, it seems, was very little.
The Nawab, who apparently at one point even considered abdicating, eventually agreed to these tentative conclusions. A communique was issued. It confirmed he'd temporarily run the state, agitation for or against the merger would be suspended, and the ministry resigned. But here's where his negotiating skill, even when cornered, kind of shines through again. He insisted, no announcement about Bhopal's merger until the future of other major states like Baroda, Kolhapur, Travancore, Cochin had been settled. He was still trying to exert some influence, maintain some leverage, linking Bhopal's fate to these other big players.
Right. But the central government, in the end, decided to postpone Bhopal's actual amalgamation with Madhya Bharat. They opted instead for this transitional arrangement. The state would be administered directly as a chief commissioner's province. And this decision, if you look at the bigger picture, seems heavily influenced by the need to reassure the Muslim population. Given that unique demographic situation we talked about earlier, it was a strategic pause, really. Prioritizing stability, managing potential unrest during a very sensitive transition, rather than rushing a full merger immediately.
Okay, so after this long, winding road, negotiations, pressure, strategy, the Bhopal merger agreement was finally signed by the Nawab, April 30, 1949. And the state was officially taken over by a chief commissioner on June 1st, 1949. Now, this agreement wasn't just a standard template. It had some truly distinctive features that really set it apart from many other princely state mergers.
Absolutely. It really showed the bespoke nature of these deals sometimes. First, obviously, the Nawab ceded full and exclusive authority, jurisdiction, powers, everything related to governing Bhopal to the government of India. That's the core transfer. But the privy purse, that's fascinating. It was fixed at an exceptionally high Rs 11 lakh annually, and Rs 1 lakh of that was specifically earmarked for his eldest daughter, the heir apparent. This was one of only 11 cases where the privy purse went over the usual Rs 10 lakh ceiling, and it was fixed on an ad hoc basis, just decided then and there. And uniquely for Bhopal, along with Hyderabad and Patiala, this figure was not fixed after talking to a responsible ministry or popular leaders within the state. This exceptional financial package, way above the norm, decided without popular input. It wasn't just a payout. It shows the immense political capital the Nawab still held, and perhaps the central government's urgent need for a peaceful resolution, even at a high cost, to avoid more fragmentation or unrest. It's a stark illustration of the compromises sometimes made for national unity. And the agreement also guaranteed a huge sum, Rs 9,000 annually, for his successors, with no time limit mentioned, plus another Rs 5,055,000 annually from his investment in the Bhopal State Railway.
That's just a staggering financial arrangement, especially the part for his successors, with no time limit. It really underlines the unique bargaining position the Nawab managed to maintain, didn't it?
It certainly does. And another big difference from other mergers, the Nawab negotiated the final division of his private assets versus public assets himself. Usually that decision was left to a judicial officer appointed by the government of India. Now, this isn't just a detail about personal wealth, it gives you insight into those enduring power dynamics. Even as India was asserting its sovereignty, the personal autonomy and financial security of these powerful rulers remained a major bargaining chip, often dictating the terms of integration for figures like the Nawab. He also agreed to hand over certain jagirs, these hereditary land grants that provided revenue and influence which had been granted to him by his mother, but only after appealing directly to Sardar Patel for a final decision. The agreement explicitly stated the Nawab was entitled to all personal rights, privileges, immunities, dignities, everything he enjoyed as ruler just before August 15, 1947. So, preserving his status and wealth was clearly a key condition.
Right, so even while handing over control of the state, he kept a direct hand in negotiating his personal legacy and assets. That's a subtle but really powerful detail.
Exactly. And regarding succession, the agreement stated that succession to the Bhopal throne would follow the succession to the throne of Bhopal Act of 1947, which was then in force in the state. And all the rights and privileges secured by the agreement would continue for his successors. One final point. The Nawab initially wanted any disagreements arising from the merger agreement to be subject to judicial determination by the federal court. But VP Menon objected pretty strongly. He stated quite clearly that political matters shouldn't be adjudicated by a court. Which brings up that critical boundary, doesn't it? Between political negotiation and legal oversight in these huge transitions. The new government clearly wanted to keep these sensitive integration deals firmly in the political arena, avoiding potentially long legal battles.
So after all these complex negotiations were finally ironed out, Bhopal was initially taken over as a chief commissioner's province. This wasn't meant to be permanent, but it was strategic. The understanding was its position would be reviewed after at least 5 years. Allowing things to stabilize under central administration seems like a sensible, cautious approach, given its unique history, demographics, and, well, the significant concessions that were made.
Stepping back, yes, this interim setup allowed for a smoother transition. And eventually, Bhopal was integrated into the state of Madhya Pradesh. That happened during the linguistic reorganization of states in 1956. And perhaps fittingly for a state with such historical significance and strategic importance, it was also made the capital of Madhya Pradesh, cementing its place in modern India and acknowledging that central role it always had.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener? Well, it means that even within the grand, often simplified narrative of nation building, the individual stories of these states and their leaders, they reveal a depth of complexity, negotiation, and strategic thinking that is truly remarkable. It shows how nation building isn't just about lofty ideals, but also about gritty, sometimes difficult, painstaking diplomacy. What a deep dive that was, from that audacious vision of the Third India right through to the meticulous, sometimes contentious negotiations over privy purses and private assets. Bhopal's story is a powerful testament to the immense challenges and the careful diplomacy involved in forging a new nation from such a diverse patchwork.
Indeed. The integration of Bhopal really gives us a compelling look at how personal relationships, strategic location, demographic concerns, popular feeling, and sheer political will all converged. They shaped one crucial piece of the Indian puzzle. It truly highlights the art of the possible in statecraft, doesn't it? Where ideal visions often have to meet the hard realities of unification.
And as you reflect on this journey, maybe consider this provocative thought. In our own era, defined by global integration and the shifting sands of national identity, what lessons can we draw from Bhopal's intricate journey about balancing regional autonomy with that powerful drive towards national unity? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Bhopal state's integration. We hope you're leaving with a richer understanding and maybe some fresh perspectives on this really pivotal moment in history.